Hey, RetconRaider here. My first video about Stygian Reign of the Old Ones was pretty well received, so I figured I'd go ahead and scrape together some more information for a second look at this fascinating take on Lovecraft's work. So for this video, I'll be focusing on everything we know about the character creation system. Of course, it's worth keeping in mind that this is all information based on the design pitches from last year, so it's possible that some elements will be changed before we receive the final product. We'll have a better idea of exactly what did and didn't make it into the game once the demo comes out later this year. When you're creating your hapless adventurer in Stygian, the first thing you'll do is choose your character archetype and gender. There are 8 different archetypes to choose from, with each one presenting a different playable prologue, as well as specialized dialogue options that aren't available to the other archetypes. In addition, each archetype will have a set of 3 specialized skills that they are particularly attuned toward learning. While they can technically learn any skill you want them to, they will be able to advance those 3 specialty skills to higher ranks than other archetypes that lack those specializations. So, let's go through the 8 archetypes real quick to give us an idea of what roles we might end up playing in Stygian. First, we have what is quite possibly the most iconic of all protagonist roles in a Lovecraft story, the academic. In Stygian, the academic will specialize in the science, psychology, and medicine skills, and they gain greater benefits from reading books. Their backstory includes being a former member of the faculty at the infamous Miskatonic University, and their prologue will involve being sent on an ill-fated expedition, mirroring the events of Lovecraft's tale, Beyond the Mountains of Madness. Next, we have the aristocrat. The aristocrat will specialize in the science, speechcraft, and occult skills, and will begin the game with a special henchman, their loyal servant. Their personal prologue story will involve visiting their family estate after the death of their only living relative, perhaps in reference to the Lovecraft tales, The Alchemist, or the more macabre, The Rats in the Walls. Then we have the criminal, who specializes in firearms, stealth, and subterfuge, and who gains more money when stealing from NPCs. The criminal's prologue involves collecting protection money for a mob boss, which leads the player to a shady nightclub where the patrons have particularly peculiar tastes. Fourth, we have the Explorer, who is unlocked as one of the stretch goals. The Explorer specializes in firearms, occult, and survival, and is more likely to discover special objects or landmarks while traveling the world map. They will also apparently gain a special Loyal Hound companion. Their unique prologue will involve an expedition to the Dark Continent, where they encounter an ancient tribe. Perhaps a reference to the Cho-Cho, who are mentioned in a few of Lovecraft's stories. And then there's the Investigator, a staple of the noir genre, though only rarely used in Lovecraft stories. The Investigator specializes in the firearms, investigation, and psychology skills, and is more likely to discover hidden items. Their unique prologue involves an investigation into a series of kidnappings, likely a reference to the horror at Red Hook. Next is the Performer, an archetype that specializes in athletics, speechcraft, and stealth. They have the unique ability to increase the morale of their companions, helping to stave off panic and madness, and their unique prologue involves being invited to Arkham to put on a private performance for a wealthy admirer. Seventh, we have the Occultist, a member of an unspecified secret society. They specialize in investigation, medicine, and, of course, the occult, which allows them to use magic with less inherent risks. This character archetype's prologue involves completing the initiation rites required to join the inner circle of the secret society. And last, but certainly not least, we have the Soldier. The most combat-oriented of the 8 archetypes, the Soldier specializes in firearms, melee, and survival, while also enjoying a reduced chance of critical failures during combat. Their prologue involves taking part in a government-led assault on an isolated coastal town, which results in a clash against inhuman foes, clearly a reference to the shadows over Innsmouth. Once the player has chosen their archetype, they have to decide which skills and associated perks they want to focus on. As I mentioned earlier, their archetype will determine which skills they are best suited toward learning, but a player can put points into any skill they feel will be useful. There's no reason, for example, that an academic can't learn how to defend himself with a gun or a blade, and likewise there's nothing stopping a soldier or criminal from dabbling in science or the occult. As we can see from this screenshot, there are 12 skills in total, and information from the Kickstarter campaign tells us that each skill has at least 3 associated skill perks that we can unlock. The first skill is Investigation, perhaps one of the most important skills, which will allow us to find clues and hidden items. The 3 associated perks are Photography, Tracking, and Questioning. The Investigator and the Secret Society Occultist will be specialized in this skill. The second skill is Science, which serves as the main crafting skill and will also be used when researching the alien creatures and environments around New Arkham. The associated perks are Advanced Autopsy, Great Inventor, and Metabolism Expert. The Academic and Aristocrat archetypes specialize in this skill. The third skill is Psychology, which will be invaluable for both sensing the motives of the NPCs you meet, and also for staving off the grasping fingers of insanity that will plague the members of your party. The associated perks are Psychoanalysis, Mental Barrier, and Therapy. The Academic and Investigator archetypes specialize in psychology. The fourth skill is Speechcraft, which is your catch-all diplomacy skill covering the use of words when persuading or deceiving the people you meet. The associated perks are Manipulation, Intimidation, and Seduction. The Aristocrat and Performer archetypes specialize in Speechcraft. The fifth skill is Occult, which is useful for comprehending the incomprehensible and is vital if you plan on using magic. The related perks are Spellweaving, Ritual Mastery, and Sacrifice. The Aristocrat, Explorer, and Secret Society Occultist all specialize in this skill. The sixth skill is Melee, which of course determines how skilled your character is at close quarters combat. The associated perks are Martial Arts, Fencing, and Exotic Weapons. The only archetype that specializes in this skill is the Soldier. The seventh skill is Firearms, which serves as the second primary combat skill and covers the use of all manner of guns. The associated perks are Gunslinger, Rifle Expert, and Special Weaponry. It's a feature of half the archetypes, with the Criminal, Explorer, Investigator, and Soldier all specializing in the use of firearms. The eighth skill is Stealth, which, honestly, is likely to serve you much better than the 2 combat skills will. The associated perks are Vanishing, Silent Running, and Assassination. The Criminal and Performer both specialize in Stealth. The ninth skill is Medicine, which could be a vital skill, allowing your character to both craft and make use of healing items. The associated perks are Xenobotany, Drug Expert, and Purifier. The Academic and Secret Society Occultist both specialize in Medicine. The 10th skill is Athletics, which covers the art of dodging attacks and performing athletic maneuvers. Associated perks include Escape Artist, Exceptional Reflexes, and Daredevil. The only archetype that specializes in athletics is the Performer. The 11th skill is Subterfuge, which is a catch-all skill including most criminal activities, such as picking locks and stealing from people. The associated perks are Cheating, Master Thief, and Dirty Fighting. Unsurprisingly, the only archetype that specializes in subterfuge is the Criminal. The 12th and final skill is Survival, which appears to be a primarily defensive skill which will likely boost your resistance to various types of harm, as well as guarding against certain negative events. The associated perks are Snake Eater, Camping, and Sentry. The Explorer and Soldier both specialize in Survival. Another important part of character development is assigning your primary stats. There are 6 in total, and they are likely used as the basis for how well you perform in combat, as well as how high you can raise your skills and which perks you can take. There are 6 attributes in total, including Physicality, Agility, Senses, Mind, Will, and Aura. It also appears that the player will get to choose their relative age, which will play a small role in determining both their starting attributes as well as their starting number of skill points. This character, for example, is young, which grants her 1 extra point in her body attribute but at the cost of starting the game with 2 less skill points than normal. Beyond that, there is the belief system, which will play a large part in determining how the player approaches the game. I'm not certain if the player will get to choose their own beliefs or if they'll be assigned based on the archetype system, but there are 6 beliefs in total, with each one determining the player's primary means of recovering lost sanity. The first belief is humanism, the belief that humanity can overcome any obstacle if they simply cooperate with one another. This belief will likely reward the player for overcoming obstacles through diplomacy and teamwork. The second belief is materialism, the belief that, if humanity is doomed anyway, you might as well spend your final days enriching yourself. This belief will likely reward the player for enriching themselves in any way possible, even at the expense of others. The third belief is nihilism, in many ways the exact opposite of humanism. Nihilism represents the belief that humanity has no significance in the grand scheme of things. This belief will likely reward the player for making decisions that reflect their nihilistic belief that nothing they do will matter in the long run. The fourth belief is rationalism, the belief that no matter how strange things become, there will always be a rational explanation for it. This belief will obviously reward the player for finding ways to rationally explain the many strange things they will encounter. The fifth belief is, of course, belief in the divine, the belief that there is a higher power, and that we should act in a manner that redeems us in the eyes of that higher power. This belief system will obviously reward the player for acting on faith and hope. The sixth and final belief is esotericism, the belief that, given the state of the world, we should simply embrace the supernatural. This belief system will obviously reward the player for learning more about the occult, perhaps including how to bend it to your will. Then there are traits, which we don't know much about just yet. Based on the screenshots, the player will get 2 slots for traits, and there will be both generic traits and traits that are specific to certain archetypes. This screenshot, for example, shows us 2 traits: Star, which is likely a performer-specific trait, and Family Tragedy, which is more likely a generic trait. The archetype, skills, perks, beliefs, and traits will form the foundation of your character, which in turn will determine many of your secondary attributes, most notably your combat attributes, which are shown in this screenshot. As I mentioned in my first video, the game will use an action point system, but beyond that it's important to remember that many fights will be more a matter of tactical survival, rather than straightforward combat. So in some cases, your defensive attributes may be more important than your offensive abilities. As the game progresses, the player will earn 2 types of experience. Conventional experience points will be gained as you complete quests, emerge victorious from combat scenarios, and make successful use of your skills. As you accrue these experience points, you will gain additional skill points, which will allow you to improve your skills and learn new skill perks. In addition, as I mentioned in my first video, the player will also accrue angst as they play. Angst is a dark mirror to the conventional experience point mechanic, representing the slow degradation of the character's physical and mental abilities as they suffer through one horrific ordeal after another. Where experience points are rewards for success, angst is a reward, of sorts, for failure. You will gain angst when you suffer damage in combat, when you fail to achieve objectives, or when the people around you die in horrific or tragic ways. Once you've accrued enough angst, you will be able to purchase special perks such as masochism or ill-tempered, which will provide you with small bonuses for acting in counterproductive ways. Masochists, for example, will gain sanity when they suffer injuries, while ill-tempered characters will gain additional angst for deliberately mistreating their friends. This will play into the madness system. Given that this is, after all, a game based on the works of Lovecraft, sanity management will be a large part of the game. Inevitably, your character will begin to grow increasingly unhinged, and that's where mental conditions come in. Unlike many games, in Stygian, mental conditions are not entirely bad things. While they will certainly impose negative modifiers on your character's actions, they will also provide some benefits. And perhaps even more interestingly, they will heavily influence some of your dialogue options, drastically changing the way you might interact with an NPC as you become increasingly insane. Although it's unlikely to be a comprehensive list of all the mental conditions in the game, Cultic Games has given us several examples of the sorts of mental conditions we might end up suffering from. Mania will increase your character's action points in combat, but will also occasionally cause us to lose control of our character, causing them to attack a foe at random. Paranoia will increase your character's reaction score, but will also occasionally cause your character to attack allies in combat. Schizophrenia will increase your character's mental resistance, but will also occasionally cause your character to lose a turn. Psychopathy grants a bonus to your chance of striking critical hits in combat, but also causes you to lose more sanity every time you strike a killing blow. Depression increases supernatural defense, but causes your character to care less about their physical safety, represented by an occasional debuff to physical defense. And obsession grants an increased chance of success when repeatedly taking the same action in combat, but with an increasing chance that your character will automatically continue to repeat that action without your input. One surefire way to induce madness in your character is to dabble with the magic system. We don't know much about this system just yet, but Cultic Games has told us that there is no conventional mana system. You will essentially fuel your spells through personal sacrifice. Spells such as Blood Circle or Evil Eye will grant considerable boons in combat, but will require the expenditure of things like health, attributes, or even your humanity. And then, finally, that brings us to the inventory system. Beyond stats, the player's chief means of customizing their character will be through the Paper Doll, which uses a basic drag-and-drop interface to allow you to equip various cosmetic and utility items, as well as a wide assortment of weapons. Equipped items will generally appear on your character's in-game avatar, allowing some control over exactly what your character will look like. This short video appears to showcase several of the cosmetic clothing items used by the game's archetypes, as well as an assortment of the various weapons that we'll encounter throughout the game, including the Molotov cocktail. One of the items will be able to craft with the game's crafting system. And that covers pretty much everything we know about Stygian's character system, at least for now. Cultic Games is currently planning to release a backer-exclusive game demo in August, just a few months from now, and you can be sure that I'll have more to say about this intriguing tactical RPG once I've gotten my hands on that. But for now, this is RetconRaider signing off. Thanks for listening. And remember, although I do love talking about Stygian, Reign of the Old Ones, you can keep up with the latest news yourself by visiting the official website, the Facebook page, or the crowdfunding page on Kickstarter. Links are in the description.